Good afternoon, everyone. It is 12 o'clock, and thanks for joining me for my daily live, both on Facebook and Instagram as normal. I'm going to wait a few minutes for people to turn up, and if you've got any questions or comments, please drop them in the box below, and we'll make a start shortly. Today's topic is patient communication. It's something we've done many times before, but I still think is not very easily understood. And we're going to look at something quite specific. We're going to look at building rapport on that first visit. But this works for all patient interactions, treatment, new patient, old patient. It's very important to follow this process, or follow a process. So I'm just going to wait a couple of minutes. If there's anything else I can help you guys with in your practices, in sifting through the amount of information that's coming through with regard to PPE, or and give you my understanding of it, then please let me know. Is there any problems in your practices or your teams that you're worried about that you need some help with? I'm keen to get in and give value and help you guys in this very difficult period. So please feel free to message me in the usual way. I'm available on Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp. My numbers are on my profile, and don't feel alone. I don't want you guys to worry about what's going on. Specifically, I've been talking to some associates about worries about litigation and concerns about just waiting for complaints to happen. So I really want to make those associates feel understood, and that I do get where they're coming from. I've managed to reconcile in my head, and I work fairly easily and fairly calmly with my patients in terms of, do I worry that there's going to be complaints? No, it's not on the forefront of my mind, because I know what I've got in the background in terms of the practice, in terms of the way I work, helps to protect me against that. So simple things, and I can talk about that probably another time. Right, so let's get into this. So rapport and patient communication, particularly rapport building to make the patient feel at ease, is about a mutual understanding. It's an emotional connection where you're really trying to connect with that patient on a level where they trust you and you trust them. So it is a two-way thing. It might not feel like that in a dental practice setting, because obviously you are the dominant character in that relationship, and that's what the patient will feel. So things like greeting the patient properly and putting yourself at their level when you're talking to them in the chair, and coming around to face them. These are all ways that you can minimise that dominant relationship that inevitably occurs when a patient walks in the room. So the first thing I'd say, and it's really simple, is smile. You know, if you're a moody git, when you meet your patient for the first time, or when you meet your patient regularly, they're going to know something's off. They're going to feel that you're not really interested. So this costs nothing and achieves so much. So crack a smile even if you don't want to, because remember, you're front of house. You're on stage, and there is no excuse. You leave your baggage at home. You leave your worries in the car. It doesn't need to be brought to work, because the patient is there to be cared for, and you need to show that you're present and available to them. So certainly there should be no phone pinging. There should be no interruptions, but the most simple thing is to smile, and that I can't emphasize that enough. The second thing is show interest, genuinely show interest in them. Now, I work in a practice that's very close to Warwick University, so we see some amazing patients. We treat PhD, postdoctoral research fellows, God knows what. The caliber of patient in my practice is amazing, and even the ones that aren't at Warwick, they're well travelled, well educated and well read. So I genuinely show interest, bordering on being nosy, because I really do want to learn from my patients. They have my patient base, as you guys will probably know if you've been following me, they're quite an older population, so they've lived a life. They've got experiences and stories, and I'm all for learning about what's happened in their lives, where they've been. One of my patients is 82 years old, and she happens to be an ex-retired dentist. She's writing her memoirs. And she's got some fascinating stories about her time in the 60s and how they practiced dentistry there. Just really fascinating. So much so, I've asked if I could write her forward for her book. So I'm really looking forward to that. So you just don't know where these conversations will take you unless you start. And being a little bit nosy is quite a good skill. It's quite a good characteristic, and it can lead to some really interesting conversations. You know, some patients will talk to you about things that are happening in their lives, and it's a cathartic and it's a release for them just to talk to somebody who is not going to judge them, is not going to talk against them, is not going to repeat what they say. So it's really important to show interest and try and build those bonds. I always see my patient, my new patient, my old patient, as a lifelong patient. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to leave that practice in a box, I think. And so I want to know about my patients. And sometimes my nurse will be tapping her watch and looking at the day list because I'm talking too much, or patient and I are talking too much. So, and that leads on to this. Make patients feel important, ask open-ended questions, and get them to talk about themselves. Because you know what? We all like to talk about ourselves. Our most favourite subject is us. You know, you can't, forget practice setting for a second. If you meet somebody in a coffee shop, if you talk to somebody in a bar, the best thing you can do is ask them to talk about themselves. It builds rapport very quickly, and it helps one to learn about people very quickly, because the most confident thing people can talk about is themselves. It's the subject they know the most about. So allow them to speak. And sometimes I think NHS dentistry, we're diagnosing before they've walked in the door, and they're in and out in a flash, and you know that doesn't make people feel important. It makes people feel like a number. So slow your dentistry down and make people feel important. This one always makes me chuckle. Use positive body language. So this is what. So you find that young dentists, old dentists, you know, read something on neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, and believe they have to copy what the patient does to build rapport. Yes, that does work, but only when it's done very, very subtly. If you try and push this and you don't know how to do it properly, it can come across really, really strange. It comes across really strange, really odd kind of stalkerish behaviour. So the use of positive body language, I think, also means things like not leaning against a wall when you're talking to a patient. And yes, I've had associates do that as well. So, you know, that shows, if you're leaning against a wall, it just shows you're not interested. So obviously don't do things like that, but then also don't use things like NLP mirroring techniques to build rapport unless you're very good at it and you've practiced a lot, and it becomes subtle and second nature to you. I guess you've got to start somewhere, but just be very careful with it. So with making the patient feel important and showing interest is actively listening. So if we go back to Covey, I always go back to Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, you know, seek first to understand before being understood. And that is never a truer statement than in healthcare and in dentistry. If you don't actively listen and understand your patients, how can you help them? How can you truly help them? How can you understand the underlying non-verbal communication, the verbal communication that's coming through from your patient, that they may be saying something, but they might mean something different? And unless you're actively listening, which doesn't mean waiting to speak, it means listening. You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, remember? So you've got to listen a lot more than you speak. And I have to admit, I do find that quite difficult. I'm one of those people that jumps in, and I've had to slow down, and it does take work, but you have to be aware of yourself, you have to be understanding of your own limitations, and then you have to change. You have to work towards it. So actively listening, patients will tell you everything. They will tell you everything. If you make them feel important and show interest, they will tell you everything. You've just got to be open to listen to it. This one I also find quite difficult for dentists trying too hard. If you can pay a compliment, pay a compliment. If you like the colour of somebody's shoes, or you think that handbag looks amazing, and I know a lot about handbags because I have a wife that loves to shop. So when a lady comes in with a gorgeous looking handbag, I will say so, and they'll look at you a bit funny thinking, how do you know that? And then I tell them. And remember, showing interest and making them feel important is also giving of yourself and talking about yourself. And I know some dentists don't want to do that, but I think it's a very intimate environment, isn't it? Patients being very trusting of you. They've never met you before, and they're allowing you to look in their mouth and do work on them. So if you have to give of yourself, I don't think that's too much to ask. So if you can pay a compliment, pay one, but do it genuinely and sincerely. And if you can't, don't. If you genuinely can't find anything nice to say about somebody, which is very difficult, I would not bother, because it won't come across right. Now, there have been times when I've seen a patient that probably hasn't washed for a while, and they look dishevelled, and they are, to want of a better phrase, that they are smelling. But you can still find something nice to say about the patient. You can still find some common ground to talk about. There's not, we still have to treat patients with dignity, with kindness, with respect. And do you know what? You don't know what's going on in people's lives. You don't know what's happening to them today, what happened yesterday, and what will happen tomorrow. You really don't know their lives. So I always show interest. I always make people feel important. And I think I'm doing it correctly. Patients are still coming back. And no matter what the patient's state is, it doesn't matter. You can still provide some love and care and kindness. And we've got patients that, sometimes it's very difficult. If you've got a patient who is too overweight for your chair, to have that conversation is really difficult. You don't want to judge anyone, you're not saying anything negative, you're just trying to protect their best interests, because you don't want them to hurt themselves and indeed hurt you if they get into that chair. But it's a really difficult conversation to have, and I have done it a couple of times, and I have struggled with it, because you don't want the patient to think that you're judging them, because it's not about that. But it all comes from showing interest, making patients feel important, and actively listening, that will help those kind of conversations. So we were talking about paying a compliment. So if you can pay one, but if you can't, don't. Don't try too hard. I find handbags and shoes are really simple ones, and I do know about both, unfortunately. And it can be a great, the patient taken aback that you'd notice something like that. This one is about team systems. Learn prior to the appointment. So learn about your patient prior to them coming in, because it helps all of this. So if you can learn prior to the appointment, and the WKY means we know you. So that means from the desk, when the appointment's been made and your receptionist has made that friend, they've made that friend in that patient when they've booked the appointment, they've learned something about where they're from, why they're coming to us, what their dog's name is, I don't know, whatever they can find out about the patient. And it's all just to make patients feel comfortable when they come and see me, because I'm the big scary dentist, and whatever I can do to help them. Oh, so I hear you walk the dog every day. Well, that must be really good for your health and fitness. How long have you had your dog for? I don't know, but it just breaks the ice, doesn't it? It shows the patient that you're human and you talk about normal things. Patients are not asking for a lot from us. They just want to feel comfortable in our presence. We're the guys with the drills and the pointy things as far as they're concerned. So it's really important that your reception systems and your nurses and your staff are brilliant at just getting some information. There's one other thing that I've missed off at the beginning, which I always do, and that is introduce myself. So when I smile, I always introduce myself, and in normal circumstances I will shake hands. And when I shake hands, I say, "Lovely to meet you, Mrs. Jones. Thank you so much for coming to see us. It's a real privilege that you've chosen our practice." And then I'll do this. And this is my colleague, Kelly. We'll both be looking after you today. Kelly is my right-hand person. I've worked with her for years, and I couldn't do the job without her. Now, what does this say? This says, this dentist works well with his team. This dentist appreciates his nurse. This dentist likes working here, and he's smiling at me. Just from that introduction, I bet the patient is already happy and calm and relaxed, or at least 50% of their anxiety's gone. Just from that. And guess what it does for your staff? It tells your staff that you appreciate what they do, because let's be honest, we couldn't do what we do without our staff, without our nurses and receptionists. We couldn't do it. No matter how great a dentist you are, you cannot treat patients on your own, and you shouldn't for that matter. But certainly I wouldn't want to. And even when I've gone in for emergencies and things, I really miss my nurses. I really miss them, and if I can get them to come in, I would. So smile, introduce yourself, thank the patient for coming, and also introduce your nurse, your team, and just make sure patients understand it is a team approach. And then, during the appointment, if I'm talking about, I'm going to send you to go and see my hygienist Mina or Karen, I'm going to say, these are part of my team, and we work together, to look after your teeth and help you to move along in your prevention, in the preventative care. So I want the patient to understand it's not just me. It's not just me, it's yourself, the patient, and it's the rest of the team that are going to help you. And it also means that if I'm not available for any reason, my patient feels comfortable talking to the nurse they met. They feel comfortable talking to the hygienist they met, because I've already empowered them to say, these guys know their stuff. So, I want you as a patient to have that relationship with my team, because it shouldn't be all about me. It really shouldn't. So this one, relax. Don't try too hard as the dentist. Don't try too hard as a hygienist, for that matter. Just be yourself. And always, always, always just take a breath. Yes, I said you're on stage. Yes, I said the lights are on you. Yes, it's important to get this bit right so that the patient is relaxed and comfortable. But just relax yourself. If you're stressed or worried, it's going to come across. So, if you have to do a power pose, or otherwise known as a Wonder Woman pose, or whatever it is that gets you pumped and gets you happy and smiley and just relaxed, then do that. Because do you know what? If you take a couple of minutes just before the appointment, just to get yourself in the frame of mind to be accepting of another person's problems and issues and prejudices, dare I say, as well. When patients come in, they are worried about dentists, and they've got a history of probably bad experiences, and your job is to change that. Your job is to turn them around and really make them, I wouldn't say love to come to see you, but certainly not fear to come to see you. So definitely relax. And this is really important. Now always use the patient's name, always. So if they give you permission to use their first name, use their first name. Otherwise, always use their surname. And I would say, certainly we see a lot of foreign students from the university, particularly the Chinese students, and they have quite difficult names for us to get right first time. But I make an effort to get their name, their proper name, correct, because usually they've already anglicized it by the time I've seen them. So I make an effort to learn their name and to use their name, because do you know what? I really want to. Number one, I want to learn that, and also I want to make them feel comfortable, make them feel that I care, make them feel that I am interested in them. So all of this, make that patient feel important, comes from using the patient's name. I'd say this is, after smile and introduce yourself, this is very, very important. Take the time to learn their name. We have quite a wide, a large group of Polish patients at the Stratford-upon-Avon practice, and I do take time to learn their names. I spend a good 30 seconds to a minute with the patient and say, have I said this right? How do I pronounce this? Is this correct? Because it makes a difference, it really does. I guarantee you no one else will have done that. No one else will have taken the time to get their name correct. I have some Polish friends in the property circles that I inhabit, and I spend the time to learn their names, because it just makes people feel comfortable with you. And I want to know. I am genuinely interested. So that's a kind of whistle-stop tour of patient communication with specific specificity to the rapport side of things. And remember, this works in life as well. When you're out shopping, when you're out in town, when you're meeting people at a networking event, whatever you're doing, these things and certainly paying people compliments and smiling and are very simple human characteristics we should use, and skills that we should use in our daily lives. So I hope that's been of some benefit, and next time's live will be on Wednesday. So it'll be Wednesday at 12 o'clock, not tomorrow. So Wednesday at 12 o'clock for my next live. We're going to look at some other aspect, most likely, of patient communication, because, as I said, I don't think it's done particularly well, even though we've all been through communication skills training for various courses and things. But it's important that I think these 9 tips for building rapport, if you can get a few of them in, it really makes such a difference. If you want me to talk to you about scripts and actual scripting out some of this, it can be done, but sometimes it comes across as a bit contrived. So it's better just to have this aid memoir probably just on the back of the headrest or wherever you are, and just remember. But it's simple stuff. This, smile, introduce yourself, introduce your nurse, and really make it a team approach. Show some interest in people. Be nosy. Be nicely nosy, not stalker nosy. and make people feel important. It's very important to get people to buy into you, to believe they've made the right choice in choosing your practice and choosing you. Now, many a time they haven't chosen you and haven't chosen your practice, especially if you're the only practice taking on NHS patients. So you want to make them feel that, wow, I've landed in the correct place. You know, I didn't choose this, but I've landed in the correct place. Your use of body language, don't overdo this until you're really good at it. And I guess to be good at it, you've got to practice. Just be careful with body language, and certainly don't be leaning against the wall. And you know, losing eye contact. You know, you should be looking at your patients and looking away, looking at patients and looking away in the eye. You shouldn't be staring them down. Yeah. And you shouldn't be off looking somewhere else or looking over the top of their head, which is incredibly disconcerting. So actively listen, you know, really actively listen. And then I'd go so far as to say actively listen means to paraphrase and reply back with, so let me understand this correctly, Mrs. Jones. Did you go here and then this happened and then that happened? That really makes them understand that you have heard what they've said. You've genuinely heard what they've said, and you've relayed it back. And sometimes you do miss things, and they'll correct you. No, this came before that, or no, I didn't have the root canal done there, I had it done at the practice 5 years ago. You know, so you build up that picture. So actively listen means to really listen. Pay a compliment if you can, but don't overdo it. You know, if you can't pay a compliment, don't. And no matter what state the patient comes in, how rude they are to you, how direct they are to you, I would still try and do this, because most of the time that rudeness, that aggressiveness comes from fear. And if you've done this correctly, usually you disarm them. Usually it eases them down, and it just takes it down a number of notches. So no matter how dishevelled, how uncomfortable you feel in that patient's presence, because, you know, whatever it is, or if they make you feel uncomfortable, you can still pay a compliment. You can still take that tension down by doing this. Know something about your patient prior to them coming in. So this comes down to your practice systems, making sure that your systems are in place so that the patients, the staff know who's coming in. You've had a huddle, or you've had a discussion at least with your nurse in the room that, you know, these are the patients coming in. We've got a new patient. Oh, we've got a note saying they've broken a tooth. We've got a note saying that they're incredibly worried about coming. It's their first appointment. They haven't been for a long while. So the more you know about the patient, the better. Again, in a genuine way, not in a stalker way. You know, you're not looking to find out what they had for breakfast, although that might be useful. You're looking just to find a little bit more information about them, just to make them feel comfortable when they meet you. Be yourself and relax. Don't try and be anyone else. You know, this is about just being yourself. Yes, you're on stage, but you are being your genuine self. And then always use the patient's name and make an attempt, even if you get it wrong, to try and get the patient's name correctly pronounced. And there's no harm in asking a number of times. There's no harm in asking them to write it for you phonetically, so it's easy for you, and then pop it in the notes. And also, I'd say a lot of this and a lot of the information you get is soft information. It's not clinical, but I would still pop it in on SOE, on Exact. You can put it on a pop-up so it comes up. Patient has 3 dogs. Patient works at X place. Patient does night shift sometimes. All these things just help you build a picture of your patient, and it also helps sometimes in the world of consent to have that holistic understanding of your patient. So I have kept you a long time today. I appreciate that, and I hope it's been of some use. Please message me if you have any comments or questions or criticisms even, and I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday at 12 o'clock. Take care, guys. All the best.